Hey, everybody. Just want to take a moment right here at the beginning and thank you for waiting patiently for this episode. Man, oh my gosh, Adam and I went through so many trials and tribulations getting this completed. And just now, as of today, this morning, April 30th, we finally got his reading completed again. It's like the third time we've tried to do this, and it's all done. But the unexpected and unintended benefit from this is that Adam's reading, it became more of a conversation than just your basic reading. It was more like, I think it's more like one of his TED Talks, which, again, I think that speaks to his professionalism and his abilities as a speaker. So you're going to really enjoy this episode. I do want to say thank you one more time to Adam for all of his patience getting through all these troubles. And without further ado, let's get on over to that episode with Adam Lewis Walker, episode 116.
The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. I hope this episode finds you doing well and staying healthy, just like I am. I've been very, very busy, and it's just been really something these last several weeks. In today's episode, we're going to be talking with mindset coach and speaker Adam Lewis Walker. Adam is the author of the best-selling self-help book, Awaken Your Alpha, as well as host of the #1 ranked show and podcast, Awaken Your Alpha. And let me tell you, putting this episode together, I have certainly had to awaken my own inner alpha to get this together. This episode, as you are listening to it right now, this is the culmination of 3 separate meetings that Adam and I have had to do to put this together, because our first time, we didn't have time to do the whole interview, so got together later, did a reading, but then Zoom crashed on me afterwards, so I couldn't save it. And believe me, I have been doing everything in my power to try and recover those files, because I see them, but they won't convert. And then finally, here we are. I'm actually recording this prior to getting the reading, the chapter reading, back from Adam. I'm either getting that from him, or we're going to do that third session. With any luck, I'll have all this put together, and you won't know the difference whenever you're listening. It's just going to flow seamlessly right together. But let me tell you, it is certainly worth all the work that is going into this episode, because so many of the things you're going to hear from Adam today, I found extraordinary, because I've always wondered, whenever a speaker puts together a book, I'm just assuming it's a bunch of notes based on what they're talking about, and how well is it put together. So this was a first to me, to get to talk to Adam and kind of get an understanding of what went into it. And I mean, he puts as much effort into this book as any fiction author does. And I mean, he was really worried about, is he satisfied with the book? Is he really fulfilled by what he put into it? Is he ready to say, yes, here you go, I'm handing it over to you to read, and you will be fulfilled by what I've written? Those kinds of things. He had questions, the same kind of questions that every author goes through. Is it, am I done with it? Should I back it off and edit it? He talks about one of his earlier things that he wrote that was, book length. And by the time he was done editing it, he basically had a chapter. And I mean, that's incredible. That's something that I'm very well aware of myself, because, my first book, it was 130,000 words. By the time I got done editing, it was around 80,000, 85,000. And it's incredible to hear that, TED Talk speakers like Adam, when it comes to writing a book, that he is going through the same kind of agony that every author out there does as well. It's really incredible. There's lots of great stuff going on, and not only are we going to hear some great things, but today, April 28th, is actually the 6th anniversary of his book. And later this week is the 400th episode of his podcast. Hey, I'm going to have some links to Adam and where you can find him, where you can find his show and his books. All of that's going to be in the show notes, so make sure you stay tuned for all of that and so much more. It's a great conversation coming up here in just a few minutes. First, let's say our thank you to the sponsors such as U-Stor-All, the self-storage facility out of Warrensburg, Missouri. Hey, if you are looking for the best in self-storage, then look no further than U-Stor-All. With 2 different facilities, both of them gated, fenced in, and featuring climate control, you won't find any reason to look any further than U-Stor-All. Hey, check them out online at U-Stor-All.net. That is the letter U, STORALL.net. And of course, I want to thank the #1 writing software made for writers by writers. Yes, I'm talking about Scrivener. I use this service every day. And I guess I can't say that here lately because I've been so incredibly busy. But I do try every day to at least hop onto my phone where I have the Scrivener app and get a little bit of words written. Even if it's 50 words, it's more than I had yesterday. But I also use it on my desktop and on my laptop. I love it. And speaking of Scrivener, I want to give a special shout out to Vanessa Ebony. Vanessa and I connected on Twitter. She was looking for Scrivener and I was able to help her out getting her set up on the Mac version of it. She loves the all the different features involved with it. How you can copy, paste, move things, scroll in and out of it. She loves the folder that you can use to create information with her YA fantasies that she likes to write, and the history, because she can go in there and save all of her research is right there within reach, is what I'm trying to say. And that's one of the trademarks of Scrivener's. Everything you got is right there. You can move the chapters around, all your research, everything is right there. You can just move it around. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So hey, check out this commercial for Scrivener and hear how you can save 20%. Jason here. Hey, I wanted to take a moment and tell you about my favorite writing tool, Scrivener. Now, I know you've heard about Scrivener because their writing software has been embraced by hundreds of thousands of other writers like you and I, from the novice to best-selling novelists. The reason we all use it is because of Scrivener's core concept to bring all the writing tools you use together in a single application. And with tools like automatic backup, character maps, project goals, and let's not forget that amazing corkboard, you can see why I use Scrivener every day. As a bonus for Sample Chapter Podcast listeners, use code CHAPTER for 20% off your desktop version. Scrivener writing software, built by writers for writers. Alright, so there you go. That's that coupon for Scrivener. Don't forget to use that coupon code CHAPTER whenever you go to purchase it yourself and save 20% on the regular desktop version. Hey, I also want to give a big shout out to one of our networks, the first one I've been a part of, which is Pop Goes the Culture Network. Find them online at popgoestheculture.com, where they have a collection of other podcasts, blogs, interviews, celebrity interviews, all kinds of stuff. Anything pop culture related is right there at your fingertips. Make sure you click the link in the show notes for Pop Goes the Culture and find all the great stuff that you're looking for. And finally, I want to thank Project Entertainment Network. They are my second network that I'm a part of, and I'm very, very happy to be a part of now more than 30 shows within that network. Oh my gosh, that's just incredible. I remember late last year when they were down to, I think it was 15 or 16 shows on the network. They were downsizing, getting ready to do a big reshuffling of the entire network. And Armand Rosamilia, who runs the network, he finally got that completed and then opened it up to more shows. And man, they've doubled in size. And I'm very happy to be a part of this network. Don't forget to click the link in the show notes so that you can find so many other shows over there that that you can listen to, several that I mention on a regular basis. Mondo Method podcast, the Armcast, Dead Sexy podcast. Of course, you got Bizong, because it's got an exclamation point at the end of that. There's also Matters of Faith and Monster Attack. And then, of course, those crazy guys over at Your New Opinion. These and so many more over there, Project Entertainment. Hey, I'm going to play an ad for one of those shows coming up here in just a second, and then we're going to get on over to our interview with Adam Lewis Walker.
Welcome to Wild Speculation, a podcast where each episode is a short story that explores one of the many strange, wonderful, and sometimes disturbing worlds of speculative fiction. You can find us at wildspeculation.buzzsprout.com, on the Project Entertainment Network, and wherever else you find podcasts. So sit back, enjoy the story, and let your imagination run wild.
Good morning, friends. Hey, it's an early morning here at the Sample Chapter Podcast, but we are up and at 'em with Adam Lewis Walker, founder of the #1 ranked Awaken Your Alpha podcast. Adam is a mindset coach and speaker. His mission is to inspire 1 million entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs to rise up, pursue their ultimate lifestyle, and create a legacy. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Wonderful to have you here. I guess to start off, I need to make sure, how are you doing? Are you okay?
Hey, I'm all good. We just spoke before. I'm up in northern Michigan, even though I'm originally from England. I'm up in northern Michigan, middle of nowhere in the wilderness, and currently in my man cave basement, tucked away. So I feel like I'm in a bunker. So yeah, I'm all good.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, now, so you began this journey towards authorship as a podcaster with the Awaken Your Alpha podcast. Tell us a little bit about this. How did this begin?
Yeah, so my original idea was for a book and a podcast, kind of exactly the same time. I think probably the book was maybe a few minutes before, until I was like, I'm not going to spend 4 years I'm not in that privileged position where I can just sit there researching my first solo book for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
There was no one backing me, so it was the everything came together, and the idea for Awaken Your Alpha podcast of sharing these inspiring conversations with people all around the world in terms of how they've overcome their adversities, and the 1,000 tactics to thrive ultimately. And that's the subtitle of the book, 1,000 Tactics to Thrive. And it came from, I was a co-author in a book in 2013, and I met all the other authors that on the paper were very random, 60-year-old dentist from South Africa, a 30-plus-year-old teacher at that time from England, and just this variety. And then it was only when I met them and had the conversations that I realized, wow, I get why we're in a book now. There's success leaves clues, and there's a lot of similarities in the mindset. So that was the idea of, I want to share this for the podcast and the book at the same time. And 2014, I launched the podcast. It hit #1 on iTunes. It launched the same week as Tim Ferriss's podcast, which done quite well since. I'm not quite there, but I did get the screenshots early on where I would go ahead of him, which was a brief period, but I've got the screenshots because I barely believe it myself. And now, then 2016, I did a TEDx talk, Awaken Your Alpha, How to Rise Up. And then 2018 is when the book finally came out. And it really is a legacy piece that people are generally shocked at when they read, the quality and what it is like, because there's a lot of entrepreneur books out there, or people who are doing things, and they put out a book in like 3 months, and it's all about getting it out there and a marketing piece. This is not that kind of book. This is the book that I would hand to anyone. I would hand to my sons. I dedicate it to my sons. So if anything happens to me, this is literally the 1,000 tactics to thrive from myself and people all around the world, of how to basically handle what life throws at us. And it's very relevant in today's climate, where a lot of people are getting shook up with what's going on, and rightly so. But it's all about preparing for adversity, because it's coming for all of us at some point in our lives. It's not a question if, it's just when. So when it does come, that's not when you want to get prepared for it, because as I found out personally, I was a pole vaulter and was trying to get to the Olympics, and I thought I was slightly mentally prepared. I didn't really think about it that much. I thought I was mentally strong. And then I had a very sort of career-ending pole vault accident in the rain, and it pulled the rug from under me, and I really struggled for a few years. Operations, depression, and so I'm always aware of that, to train and prepare mentally for when adversity comes, so then you're in a better shape to handle it.
Yeah, okay. And I was going to ask, like, what was kind of the inspiration behind it, but that sounds like it's the adversity really was the inspiration, and how to cope with it, how to deal with it, and how to move past that adversity.
Yeah. I've always been positive, but in that period, I had to battle to awaken my alpha every day, and I worked hard on it, and nothing was working. So I just kept trying different things, and just gradually, over a long period, I started clawing my way back out. And that's when I became kind of obsessed with finding how other people have dealt with it. And because, I don't have all the answers, and I'm always searching, and I put in the book, the best of the best. If I think I've got a valid opinion, then that's the one I put forward. If I think someone else I've interviewed has a different slant on it, and something that's really valuable, or something that I've used myself, then I put them in and give them credit. And there is a structure to it. It's not just a random, collation of interviews. And for a book that uses pieces of interviews, they're not transcribed. That was one of the first, I was in the early drafts of the book, it was, more transcribed aspects, and that's easier to do, but it's not a good read. How people speak like this is not how you want to see it in a book, and you don't want to have all the back and forth chit and chat. So, there were multiple workings and drafts of this. So it is, really just fine-tuned down to, this is the most efficient and the best stuff, and the minimal effective dose of, almost like a guidebook and a reference. And there are 33 actions throughout the book. So it's not just like, this is how someone else has done it, and this is an idea for you. It's like, okay, how can I apply that? What action, what practical thing can I do now? What is what can really help me apply this to my life now? And again, it's a pick and choose. I've heard a lot of people have read it, and then they come back and they dive into it to specific aspects when they're, coming up against a challenge, or they just want to get a bit more clarity around certain aspects of their mission.
Yeah, and I think that's a smart way to go about it. Is if you just tell people, well, here's something, it can get very dry. And I have gone through, I think I've been through Act 1 so far of your book, your introduction, and then through Act 1. And I think I like the blending of, here's a personal story about somebody that you've met or read about, how they coped with this issue, whether you're talking about purpose, priority, process, or perspective, those sorts of things. Is you have a personal story that relates to it, so that the reader can relate to the point you're trying to get across. And I thought that was really, really fascinating, and a well done way to do it.
Cheers, I appreciate it. Yeah, as I say, I worked. There were not deadlines missed, but the launch date of the book was pushed back, because I always came back to, am I going to be satisfied and fulfilled handing this book to my boys and saying, this is for you for when you get older, instead of saying, oh, it's not quite how I wanted it, but I hit my deadline. Like, no one's going to care about that, and it is what it is. So quality was way more important to me than just putting a book out to hit a deadline. And these were all deadlines that I'd set myself, because I do believe in the power of a deadline, and I hit deadlines, but then I'm like, no, it's not quite. It needs another pass. It needs this, it was just like a TEDx talk, like anything. If you want to do it quality, you've got to go over it and do it again. It's like a podcast. I'm closing on 400 episodes. And the only way the podcast, I believe, has got to the quality is now is because, many of the episodes were not to the quality. The episode 1, I wouldn't even, no way I would listen to my episode 1 or 2 or 3, because I would be cringing. But the only way you get to that point is by putting the reps in.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there on all of that. Because yes, I just crossed 100 at Christmas time, and yeah, I go back to listen to the early episodes or go to share them. I'm like, oh gosh, I hope people don't judge the rest of this based on this episode. But the author did a good reading, and I want to make sure and share that. So, but yeah, you put in the work and you keep grinding at it. And I think that's a great mindset.
Definitely. Appreciate it.
So now, as far as writing a book, is this something you had always, maybe like in the back of your mind, you'd always wanted to do, or was it just something that kind of came up because of the adversity after the pole vault accident and the drama you had going on in your life?
Yeah, I feel like I always wanted to write a book. I don't even, it's been so long that of just wanting to, knowing I was going to, it's that almost that mindset of certainty that I would write a book. I suppose, when you're ready, and I believe you should do things before you're ready. Like we just talked about, you only get to certain points by just taking action and just making that decision and commitment. So yeah, I feel like I always, and I believe everyone has a book in them. It's just whether they, get that awareness personally, and that's something they want to do. So yeah, I've, as I said, like 2013 is when I was like, I'm going to do this specific book. But bearing in mind, 2013 is when my co-authored book came out and I became a bestseller for the first time officially. So and then working it back, and then if you trace it back even further, that co-authored book, I'd already written a full book at that point. It was, too many words. It was called Fit Kid, Fat Kid, because I founded the UK Youth Conditioning Association in 2010. So almost like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I had the idea for Fit Kid, Fat Kid. And, and I wrote that book, and it never came out because then I just reduced and turned it into a chapter. So yeah, it's going way, way, way back. So yeah, and honestly, as long as I can remember, and I see my future, one of my kind of visions of, that you imagine and project, what do you want your life and lifestyle to be like, ultimately in my woodland retreat overlooking the Great Lakes and pretty much podcasting and writing books. I would be pretty happy with that. And I'm not at that level now. I'm more and more, I can largely podcast, but the book writing, there are not going to be hundreds of thousands of fans crying if I don't write another book, and they're not waiting for the next book. I don't think there's a few people who are saying like, are you doing another book? But that would be brilliant if you could get to that level where people are, one of my interviews and one of my aspirations and kind of someone I look up to in this arena is Robert Greene. And he is a legit writer in terms of, he doesn't do anything else. He writes for like 4 or 5 years researching and writing a book. He is a writer. He's not a writer speaker or writer speaker podcaster, or he does, a lot of us have to do aspects around writing our books, whereas he locks himself away and he's dedicated, and he writes books. That's what he does. And people are legitimately waiting for him. When he puts it out, it sells millions. That is something. And I think comparing yourself to other people is a way to be very unhappy and unfulfilled. But that is just, that is, for me, that is a marker of what is possible. And, it's not about thinking, will I get to that level? But because I am a podcaster and I love my podcasting. So straight away, I'm not going to do the same version of what Robert's done. But much like Tim Ferriss, he's a podcasting machine, and I will not do that to that level in that arena, because I have diversified and I do like the mix of what I've got going on. So it's interesting what's possible, but it's important to, through the book, do the work to understand what is your setup and what are you aspiring to in certain areas, and what are you willing to sacrifice, and more importantly, what are you not willing to sacrifice?
Oh, very well said. Very well said. And I would just love to be in that situation that you're in, up there sitting at the lake in Michigan and just podcasting and writing. That would be a dream for me too.
Yeah. See, I go out, I do a lot of, and that's another thing. I know someone like Robert Greene has no aspirations and doesn't need to go out speaking and different things like that. But me personally, the speaking side of things is something that I've been ramping up more and more. And I know sometimes that goes well with certain authors, because obviously when they're out giving talks on whatever is their subject matter and area of expertise, then that lends itself to ultimately selling books at the event, or even as part of your agreement and contract with the organizers. They bulk buy a load of your books and give to the event attendees. And that is something that is in my sort of plans, and that's something that's happened and is, is something I want to ramp up more. And again, for other people that, public speaking is a nightmare in terms of they don't want to do it, and they want to, write books. They don't want to be out there speaking about it. So again, it's just understanding what works well for you and what what lights you up in terms of your plans and what doesn't feel like work to you. So I think it's important for any writers and podcasters and speakers to just do that work and get comfortable with what they do and don't like, and then really go all in on their strengths and their talents.
I agree completely. Now, you were telling me before the show that you are in the process of working on, is it a sequel to Awaken Your Alpha?
Well, it is. It is literally taking almost one of the chapters and going deep, because one of the biggest challenges with Awaken Your Alpha, and what really made it absolute mission and way harder than I thought, was, Awaken Your Alpha, it is a holistic approach to it. It was pulling in so many angles and going deep in the whole concept of Awaken Your Alpha. But there's many areas from looking into the book, the 3 key sections: awareness, action, and ascension. But then within that, there's like 4 sections within that, in terms of really covering the key areas of your life. And yeah, that was the challenge. Each one of these chapters you could almost do a book on. So through going through that process and what's coming up in the interviews over the last 6 years, I put it in the book, the chapter, I think it's the number one destructive emotion, or the biggest destructive force, and it's fear, and it's personal fear. And I believe, and through going through this, that is the biggest sort of indicator of success, or what's going to happen to you going forwards, and what's happening to you and what has happened to you is your personal fear. It's the number one thing that's going to be holding you back is you. And so it's fascinated to me. And so I've always been asking about it, but specifically in the last 2 years, and even before this book came out, I was adding extra questions around people's approach to fear and how they tackle it. And that was purely based on, that's what this next book is about. It's around the concept of fear. I have working titles, and that's evolved. And I really want to keep the the title fluid, because I want the best title, and I don't want to get my mind fixed on, this is the title of the book. But it is around fear, and I've got a TEDx talk booked in that may be getting moved because of the current situation. But I've got a TEDx talk booked in for July 30th, and that is on fear also. So there is method to the madness, and that's how I kind of go, my process of going through this. And the TEDx talk is a very powerful tool for authors and for anyone who wants more exposure to their message and what they're about. So I'm really excited to just dig in to fear. I mean, there's, even as I dig into that, I'm like, wow, you could do a whole series of books. But no, this is going to be digging into the book on fear. And it excites me. And that's how I kind of decided what is the book going to be on, because there was a few contenders, but that one just kept coming to the front. And I look at it as, I list down the next 5 books for the next 10 years and literally shuffled the order in terms of, okay, if I had one book to write, if I could only write one, which one would I do first? And that's my process, because I don't take anything for granted, especially in the current climate. I don't even know if this next book will get out, but I don't think we should think too far ahead. Just be aware of where you want to go, but be very present daily, that there's certain things that are out of your control, and don't stress about them, but just do what you can on a daily basis, and, enjoy the time you have.
I agree completely. And it seems like a very timely subject, given the current climate that we're in right now.
I was speaking to my wife yesterday, and I'm pushing up the schedule on it, because, man, I wish this book was ready to go out now. I think that could really, put a dent in terms of it's so hard to break into, mainstream media with a new book, because, anyone and their dog can write a book in 10 days now, in 10 minutes, in 10 days. And it's hard to, differentiate that, no, actually, I researched this book for 3 or 4 years, and this is, people only realize that once they open it. But the challenge is, you've got very good book marketers out there, maybe not such good writers. And that's the challenge. And then you've got very good book marketers who are very good writers. So that's the challenge. So something like this, I really wish the book was ready now, and it's not. And I'm not going to rush it in terms of get this out in the next 3 months, but I am potentially pushing up the timeline slightly, or committing to a timeline that I had loosely in place. I'm looking at maybe January 2021. But yeah, and I'm very keen for that timeline now. And I'm hopeful, but I'm also a realist that this will not be as big a challenge as the first book, because of my formatting's all done in terms of it will have my style of the book. That took a long time to get it how I like it. That's going to be my calling card. And also, I'm digging into one subject, which makes me relax straight away, because trying to cover many subjects like I did in Awaken Your Alpha, it's a great read, but it was a huge challenge to do, where I'm loving the fact that I'm just digging into fear, and I should be more realistic in how long it's going to take me, and also be open to the fact it could take longer than I think.
Well, still, it sounds incredible, and I know we're already connected in a few ways with social media and in our emails. But please, you got to let me know when that's ready, so that I can tell my listeners that that your next one is ready.
I'm so excited about it, and what I do in my process, I prep and research and structure for as long as I can hold myself off. So then when I go for it, I just go for it. I'm a big believer in this first draft. Do not reread it. Just go for it. Because if you've done the plan and the structure, that will kind of keep you, the strategy, and keep you on place and keep you in the right ballpark. But if you start going back and re-editing and stuff, you'll just be stuck in a little loop on chapter 1. So I think you've just got to get it out there, knowing that this is nowhere near the final draft. But just get it out. And so I'm very close to that point. As I say, I'm just planning and structuring and making sure I've got every point and aspect that I want to get across, and got and pulling, there's certain people I interview around this concept, and I'm literally I'm saying this is very likely to go in the book. It may not make it, because it's about the overall structure and how it fits. But I'm very close to just blasting it soon, and I'm resisting that as long as I can, because once you get into that zone, for me, then you're in writing mode, and I'm resisting that, and I don't want to then add to my my mix, because I've got more than enough of interviews and thoughts around this concept. So I'm just kind of getting inspiration and little things that add in all the time, that if you sat down and were, right, I'm going to think about all the things I need to put in, that's a big challenge. Whereas when inspiration hits you, you write that down, you add that to your list, you think that's definitely going in. And then when you sit down, you've done the years of research, and it's all there in a file, and you're like, oh, I'd forgotten about that. That's a really good point. Or, this person made a really good point in an interview. So I'm at that point, or getting close to that point. And when I pull the trigger, hey, it may be quicker than I think, but last time I basically wrote the first draft, and I had very ambitious timelines in terms of I was almost full-time just writing. I got myself a little window, and I was like I think it took me 3 months to just blasting it, but I was almost trying to pull a Robert Greene, just full-time writing. And it was, it needed so many reworkings, reviews, and the process just took so much longer, because I knew it would be painful in some ways. So I thought, right, I'm going to go like a Band-Aid. I'm just going to try and do this as quick as I can, rip it off and just blast it and get it out. And it just took so much longer. And it really was, I'm sure people can relate to this, the reality. It really was a financial strain and, a physical strain, because so many people write, 80% of a book or 90% of a book and get so close and don't put it out. And ultimately, if you don't get it out there, you've really wasted your time. And I can understand why that happens, because as you get closer to getting it out there, the resistance does get bigger. One of my favorite books, and Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, that is really relevant in the book writing process, because the resistance does grow, and you question yourself, and it's great being creative and putting all these, what you believe are very strong ideas and opinions, but when they're on your computer, who cares? But it's when you go, you're going to put it out to the world, and then life starts chucking things at you that get in the way, and you're like, oh, I've got to actually do some work. I've got to actually do other things. Like, we can't just sit here writing a book and reworking it for, months and ultimately years. So you got to get it out there. At a certain point, you have to say, for now, this is ready. It needs to get out there. I got to that point, and as I say, the resistance was huge around that time. So you learn a lot through experiencing that process, and you can read about it as much as you want and plan and prep a book, but until you've done it, it's a different ballgame.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So much writer truth in that, with the brain dump and just putting it all out there as much as you can, and then getting to that finishing point. It's like water rolling over the stone. It keeps polishing it. But at what point do you go ahead and take the stone out to take home and put on your shelf?
Yeah.
Or do you just leave it there, and eventually it's going to go away?
And the worst case, the worst case scenario, which was why I wanted that first one, really wanted to blast it in 3 months, especially the kind of line of work I'm in, and speaking to these inspiring people and always evolving and looking to get better in some way, shape, or form every day. If I was too slow writing a book, in 6 months' time or a year's time, I would definitely have to rewrite it, because I would probably want to change a lot of the things that I wrote 6 months or a year ago. So
Yep.
I was very aware of that, and I didn't want to be in that position, because you'll be constantly rewriting. If I write a book and sit on it for a year, then I have to rewrite the whole thing, even if it was perfectly fine the first time around, because things have evolved. So that was another thing I was very aware of, and I think with my first book, The Fit Kid, Fat Kid, I sat on that for too long. So ultimately, when it came to do something with it, I had to rewrite the whole thing, because it was like a year or two old.
Yep.
And that is again a very painful position to be in. So I think if you're committing to it, I think the power of a deadline, be as realistic as you can, but stick to that deadline in some shape or form, whether it's, I think finishing your first draft is a good deadline to have. I think having a loose deadline to get this book out, because towards the end, there were so many, late nights and extra times that I wouldn't have done without a deadline. And I say, these are all deadlines I put on myself. There was no big publisher waiting on this with like their royalty check. This was personal deadlines that I was approaching as if someone else had put these deadlines on me, because otherwise it just never get done. There's always a reason to delay and rework and look for that perfect time that will never come. So part of the reason for January 2021, or around that area, I should say early 2021, being a realist, is because, again, something from my publisher I did work with towards the end, things like, well, okay, if you put it out in January 2021, then it's a new book for almost a year. Whereas if you put it out, because I had deadlines, like I want to get it out in 2017, and I was busting the gut, then I definitely want to get it out in 2018. So it went out in October 2018. So in theory, in like 2 months, it's last year's book. And that they like told me about, why are you so obsessed with getting out in this? Like, what about if you put it out January 1st, then it's a new book? And I'm like, I had personal deadlines, and I was like, I am not letting this go another calendar year without getting it out. Because I honestly wanted the book out in 2017. That's how far off the mark I was, or underestimated the initial task in front of me.
Well, you're not alone there. I had announced 2 years before the release of my first book that it was about to be out, and yeah, it took me 2 years. And then my second book I have announced twice, I think, since then, and it's about ready. I'm about to hit the publish button, but
good.
Oh gosh, yeah. So
who do you publish with, or do you self-publish, or what's your process? Because I'm always interested in that. And I was adamant I was going to self-publish after my first co-authored book, and I was like 95%, but I just kept that little open window. And then I connected with as kind of like one of these hybrid publishers, and I really liked what he had to say. And then I was like, okay. And it was that smaller piece of outside accountability that really helped me. That I didn't want to, let other people down, and I couldn't just, when times got tough, I couldn't just drop it and no one would even know about it. It was like, they'd be like, hey, what's going on? I thought we had agreed on this. And just that aspect for me was useful. But I'm gone back. I want to experience all these things. So I'm again 95, maybe even higher percent that I'm going to self-publish this time, unless I go even more the traditional publishing route, because I've got a bit of a platform now. But I think they would slow me down, which is what I wouldn't like.
Oh yeah, yep. Now I self-publish. That way I just have the control over it right now. But I would love to cross over at some point and be a hybrid, because I've got some stories I think would go mainstream and some that are definitely not.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm thinking. Because I've got another smaller book that I would not put in the same bracket of, that I want to push out around the work I'm doing with, TEDx speakers and aspiring TEDx speakers, and my other podcast, Talk Accelerator podcast. That is a clear business where I help people secure and smash their TEDx talks. So around that would be a smaller book that would definitely be self-published, that I would put out there based on the podcast and the findings of the interviews with TEDx organizers and TEDx speakers. And again, I've got that kind of in my mindset for this year, but that would be a book I would look to write and put out, 3 months start to finish. But again, the reason I say I'm not 100% committed to that is because if I'm committing to the big book, then I'm aware that I can't spread myself in too many directions. So, and that's where I may be 100% self-published. And if things worked out well and they wouldn't come calling, I would call on them, and then they may give me an option of publishing more of a traditional publisher. Then maybe I'd be open to that with the big book. And again, that would be largely following certain authors that I aspire to in some way, shape, or form. And I would consult a lot of people on the pros and cons again before I made a decision.
Yep. Oh my gosh. I want so bad to just keep talking to you.
I'm just so in the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I'm a talker. Sorry about this.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I know we're up against the wall. You've got other things coming up. So where can listeners find and follow you?
Yeah. Adam Lewis Walker, anywhere. Awaken Your Alpha, put the two together. That would definitely come up. ayalpha.com/book. Just a little bit more of a specific page on my website that has, the testimonials and the book. But obviously on Amazon, please go check it out. If you put in Adam Lewis Walker and Awaken Your Alpha, probably likely the TEDx talk I did, Awaken Your Alpha, will pop up pretty quick. And the reason I like that is because if you watch the first 3 minutes of that and you don't like it, do not buy the book, because it's more of the same. It really explains the concept of Awaken Your Alpha in that first 3 minutes. But again, anyone who goes and watches that and is like, I quite like the sound of this, you will love the book. So again, I don't want people to waste their money. And to my knowledge, no one has, because if you look at the reviews, I think I have 30 in the US at least. So not hundreds, but the quality of them reviews is what I'm more happy about. So it really will have an impact if you take the time to read this.
Yes, yeah.
And let me know. We were talking about that before. People just do not let you know as much as. So if I got 30 reviews, I'm confident there's hundreds of reviews just floating in people's heads.
Yes. Everybody, all of your listeners out there, I preach that. Leave a review. Let the author know what you think. Good or bad, it's still good information.
Oh, yes, please. Because I'm writing another book. So, that may be something in there that I'll be like, hey, that's a good point. I will be aware of that and tweak and, for the next book. But please do reach out to me. I don't have a team. It's not going to be my assistant responding to you. If anyone reaches out to me around any of these concepts we've been talking about, I will respond to you personally. And I really do appreciate the feedback and the making the effort.
Wonderful. Adam, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very busy guy, and especially with this quarantine, you are just filling in blocks like crazy now, and with the writing and podcasting and doing so. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I've loved it. I don't get to speak about, writing so much. This has just reminded me about how much I love it, because I'm talking a lot about podcasting and awakening your alpha and TEDx talks at the moment. Is really like a lot of people ask me about, but man, this has just reminded me. I love writing, and I love talking about writing and publishing books. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, time for me to step aside and hand the floor over to our guest, Adam Lewis Walker, with Awaken Your Alpha, Tales and Tactics to Thrive.
Okay, so this part, we're diving into kind of the middle of the book. A lot of times, readings, and especially readings I've done for this, usually near the start of the book. But I just felt this was relevant for the time we're in. And yeah, when asked to do a reading, this really stood out to me. But another positive is I do feel I can pick up the book and dive in at any point in the book, and it would be worth reading a sample chapter. So I'm very happy with that side of things. And that was something that was pointed out to me after the book was launched. At a book launch, a lady came up to me and said, "Hey, every page I just drop into, it's got an awesome, quote that makes you think, and then a really, interesting story or a principle, or, it's just quality through." So we're going to dig in right into the middle, and we're starting with the chapter Back Yourself. And also throughout the book, there's 33 actionable boxes, really, those specific practical actions for the reader to ponder, action, question themselves, and exercise do if they choose, which I heavily suggest at some point they do, because the feedback again is it's not just reading some cool stuff and making you think, it's actually having an impact if you just input one or two of these principles into your life. So here we go. Back yourself. John Blake, Australia. Back yourself are the words John lives by, and when you hear his story, they will become all the more powerful. I first connected with John through a mastermind group. Then by coincidence, we were both in Las Vegas at the same time and had the chance to meet up. John was actually the third episode I used to launch the podcast back in 2014. And some 300 plus episodes later, I did not hesitate to include his story in this book. Side note, we're at episode 400 today as I'm recording this, so it's a quality day. For the last 25 years, John has been in sales. His experience having to overcome adversity, fight daily resistance, and back himself continues to be inspirational to me. 8 years ago, he set up a consulting business with a partner, helping salespeople to fast track their knowledge and results. He describes how they were being booked in the early years. Day 3 of a conference, a room full of salespeople with a screaming hangover after a massive barbecue lunch, their blood sugar levels in their underpants, and you're somehow expected, after a 1-hour presentation, to turn them into masterful salespeople. John remembers sitting in the terminal of Sydney Airport. He had dealt with about 75 clients during that past year, so he decided to rank them and select the bottom half. This amounted to almost 40 clients that he then deleted to see what that would do to the business's bottom line. Just 11%. I sort of looked at it and went, holy crap, we could have dealt with half the clients, done half the work, and really we would have ended up doing more business. We would have been able to focus and look after that top 50% better. John made this a reality within days. The average transaction size of the business went from 7,000 Australian dollars a client to up to about 50,000 within 60 to 90 days. Obviously, this took a massive shift in mindset, but the financial aspect swiftly followed. And this is one of the action boxes in the book. So action 14, a better way. Essentially, there are a few key things John did. Firstly, as soon as he realized there was a better way of doing business, he stepped boldly into action and backed himself to transform everything. He created 2 or 3 high-value packages to get results, then modifies his sales process so his ongoing support package was a no-brainer for clients. From a business standpoint, he was now able to attract like-minded clients, but only focusing on his ideal client. Is there a better way to do what you are currently doing? How could you package things differently? What could you change to get the best results for all involved? And I think that's really relevant at the moment in the environment we're in, where things are changing. So is there a better way or a different way you could, do things to deal with the reality in front of you? As great as this was for John, it wasn't this that awakened his alpha. It was more of a set of circumstances that were thrown at him, forcing him to step up and deal with them in the most powerful way he knew. It was a culmination of a whole bunch of things that happened all at once. My wife actually passed away 3 years ago. To add to that, at the time, she left me with a 5-month-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. I also moved house and launched a new business, all within a 14-week period. When bad things happen, it's what we do next, how we fight for our lives that defines us. Unless you have gone through that before, you won't know exactly how you will feel and deal with it. As for John, I felt like crap every day. I was pulling on the armor, grabbing the sword, going out and battling all the stuff that was just going on. So that's essentially what forced me to become strong. It was that period of my life. You know, if I can pop out the other end of that, I mean, there are not too many things that are going to rattle me. The more you back yourself, the bolder you are, the more you will be prepared to back yourself. At the end of the day, the only person you can really rely upon to back you is you. Action 15, the Dickens process. In one of the first men's workshops I did in England, I included this exercise to deal with a question: what are your beliefs costing you? The Dickens process is a neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, technique based on A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I first came across it thanks to Tim Ferriss, who had spoken about going through it at a Tony Robbins event. This is a powerful process and a great one to repeat annually. I will give you the essentials to complete. And also earlier in the book, we'd gone through ways to identify your limiting beliefs, and we've done a bit of work. Some of the actions sort of tie into this. So if it doesn't quite, if it jumps in a bit too into the beliefs, that's why. So giving it some context. Examine your top 2 to 3 current limiting beliefs using the format explained below. In A Christmas Carol, Scrooge is visited by ghosts of the past, present, and future, hence the name of the process. For each belief, answer the following. Remembering it is important to see, feel, hear, and describe your responses in detail as you get out what you put in. Number 1, the past. What has the belief cost you? How has it affected the people you were close to? What have you missed out on or lost? Number 2, the present. What is your belief costing you and the people close to you now? And finally, for this belief, the future. What will it have cost you and the people you're close to in 1, 3, 5, and 10 years' time? By being honest and really feeling the pain that has come from the beliefs in this exercise, you can't avoid or skip any timescale and impact on your life. Usually it's too easy to revert to, it'll get better, or this is how it is, without identifying what's holding you back and what that really means to you. Overcoming depression is the next chapter that I want to dig into because I think it's really important, always, but especially in this current climate, and people may be struggling mentally with certain aspects. So, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius, Roman Emperor. This is a chapter I could have quite easily missed out, and that is part of the problem. We avoid talking about depression, my former self included, but clearly I've got better at it. In society, if you break a bone or ruin a knee, as I did, everyone rallies around to ask you about it. The injury is clear to see, easy to explain, and easy to understand, and the recovery process can be quite straightforward. But tell people you're depressed and you are likely to get a complete opposite reaction. People will back away. Why do we accept that other body parts break down at times, but not our brains? This has created a culture that doesn't understand mental health. Men especially sweep depression under the carpet because real men have a strong mindset and depression is for the weak, right? Wrong. Depression hit me pretty hard a year after my pole vaulting accident. Having gone down that road, I respect depression too much to underplay it and believe that I am immune to it now. And one of the key reasons why I'm roughly 7 years clear of depression is awareness. By acknowledging it's there, I've learned from the past which circumstances, habits, and early warning signs will come back given half a chance. However, I have intentionally included depression in the action section instead of the awareness section because it is the actions, routines, processes, and tactics spread throughout this book that will weaken it. When you are really depressed, it's a tough place to be. For me, it was a long slope that I gradually slipped down over the course of a year before I finally hit rock bottom. I was stuck there for around a year too. And during that time, I wanted so badly to be happy, but I couldn't get out of my own head. I couldn't even escape to enjoy a film, and I've always been a big movie lover. Dealing with excessive stress is something I talk more about in part 3 with Tom Cronin. The key thing to grasp is that everyone has the ability to make their way back to happiness. As Tom puts it, I was a drug addict. I was suffering clinical depression. I was suicidal. It doesn't matter how far gone you are, everyone has the ability to rewrite their part to get back on orbit. The further off orbit you are, obviously, the longer it's going to take you to get back into orbit. You can get back into orbit real quick. It just takes a shift in lifestyle, a shift in the model. If you do the things I've highlighted and talked about in this book when you're feeling like crap and really don't want to, it will go a long way to preventing you from slipping all the way down slope into deep depression. I'm sure you can think of a set of circumstances that even the most mentally tough person would struggle in. Sure, everyone has varied levels of susceptibility to depression. If you've ever heard of seasonal affective disorder or SAD, that is how it emerged early on for me. Even if I was not depressed, I did get pretty low in the darker months each year. So I preempted it by scheduling certain activities or events during this time. January or February are great times to attend events that will better you, especially in somewhere sunny like California. In late 2009, after a year of traumatic events back to back and a healthy dose of denial, I was in a bad place. I was shutting down and becoming isolated. My rock bottom moment was when my mum turned up on my doorstep and I lost it. I didn't have the energy to cover it up anymore. I still felt like an absolute loser for a long time to come, but gradually from this point, I was getting better. It doesn't matter if it's a huge leap or a millimeter. Better is better. This is the same whether you're struggling or you're thriving, and that is why I truly believe in life. You are either growing or dying. You cannot stand still. Trying to maintain the status quo is a mistake. For everyone, the path out of the hole, the path to recovery is different. There is no one set answer. The divine guidance often comes when the horizon is the blackest. Gandhi. Like the seasons of life, one thing is certain. It's ever-changing nature. Animals appear to understand and deal with this better than the majority of humans. One of my favorite aspects of moving to the wilderness of northern Michigan is the connection I have with the clear seasons, embracing each one for what it brings. Friends ask, what about the winters there? To which I respond, it's better than rain. I can do something with snow. I love it. Would you really appreciate an eternal summer with blistering temperatures and no variation in weather every day? Would I appreciate snow being here for 12 months? Hell no. I love the fun activities, skiing, the landscape, and the play that comes with having kids and snow combined. Then when April comes around, I am more than ready to see the grass again. By the end of the summer, I'm excited to see the stunning Michigan colors of the autumn, or fall, they call it here, before heading into the winter again. In life, change is coming. You can either panic, complain about it, or embrace the changes, challenges, and opportunities each season brings. Always focusing on what you can't do is a surefire way to miss out on what you can do. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius, Roman Emperor. Momentum is the next chapter, and that starts with sometimes thinking too much can destroy your momentum. And that's Tom Watson, professional golfer and the oldest man to break par in the Masters. So there we go. Hope that was good for you. Hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please do check out the book, read the book, send me a review in any way, shape or form. I massively appreciate that. And reach out and connect by all and any means.
And that was Adam Lewis Walker reading a sample chapter from his incredible mindset self-help book, Awaken Your Alpha. Hey, it's an incredible book. I've pretty much finished the entire thing at this point, and I know you're going to love it. It's got some great information. It's going to help you live limitless. Don't forget to click the link in the show notes to find out more about Adam Lewis Walker and where you can get the book. Also find those links in there for our friends and sponsors alike. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out when I return with an all-new author, a new book, and a brand new sample chapter. Take care, everyone. Once again, congratulations to Adam Lewis Walker on a 6th anniversary and episode 400 of Awaken Your Alpha. Take care.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.